Welcome back to the Adam Schefter Podcast, one of my favorite weeks of the year, the official start of the holiday season that kicks off on Thursday, Thanksgiving, 3 football games, Thanksgiving, Christmas is ahead, New Year's is ahead, football's ahead, holiday spirit is ahead. It is, to me, one of the great times of the year, and it starts really this week, but on Thursday officially with Thanksgiving. And to get us ready for week 13, to the best time of the year, we bring in the host of the Pat McAfee Show, my friend, my colleague, the great Ty Schmit, for this week's Six Pack.
Thank you very much, Shefty. Early happy Thanksgiving to you and everyone else out there. You mentioned it. It's weird how we go from Sunday where it kind of just feels like another normal weekend, and then boom, come Tuesday, it's already, the holiday spirit. You can kind of start to feel it. It feels like the games mean more. And, this year especially, every single game that we have on the Thanksgiving slate, it does mean more. It means a lot. So I'm right there with you. I am so excited for Thursday.
And I would say this, Ty, in my experience covering the NFL for over 35 years, I have always found that once you get to Thanksgiving, we talk all the time, you note how quickly this has gone. Oh, I can't believe it's week 8. I can't believe it's week 10. I can't believe it's week 12. From Thanksgiving on, that's when the season takes off and goes into overdrive, and things move so fast. And right now, like I said, we're going into week 13. Snap our finger, and it's going to be Super Bowl Sunday. Watch how fast this goes here from this point on.
And Shefty, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could think off the top of your head past years where we've had this wide open outside of I guess you could make the argument that the Rams are clear cut the best team in the NFL, and we'll get to the power rankings later. But I can't remember a year in recent memory where this many teams have a stake at maybe making the playoffs, or you could take maybe 10 teams and say, hey, I could see an avenue where this team wins the Super Bowl. We talk about parity a lot, but this year it really feels real. It feels like there are 8 to 12 teams who, if they get hot at the right time, they could win a Super Bowl. I can't remember a year in recent memory where that's been the case.
Well, I think the Rams stand out right now, for whatever that's worth. And I don't want to give away my six-pack just yet. We'll get to that as item number 6 today. But I think the Rams are the best. But there are a group of teams, any one of which could win the Super Bowl, none of which would surprise you. But the Rams right now do seem a little bit head and shoulders above everybody else for right now, Ty, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I agree, but we won't bury the lead on that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's start with topic number 1 of this Thanksgiving six-pack. Shefty, Chiefs and Cowboys both had very, very impressive wins on Sunday, rallying from the brink of defeat. At points in both games, you didn't think there was any way that either one of them was going to be able to win. They both pull it out, and now they face each other on Thursday in what 4 weeks ago seemed like maybe a little bit of a dud, and now has kind of turned into arguably the marquee game of the Thanksgiving slate. What do you think about that?
Well, Ty, the highest rated Thanksgiving Day game ever was Giants-Cowboys in 2022. Now we get the Cowboys and we get the Chiefs. And as I think this will shatter the ratings records and become the most watched regular season game in NFL history. I don't know whether it's going to be 43 million or 48 million or 50 million. I think Peter Schrager was saying to me 52 million on Monday. I don't know how we go from 42 to 52 million. That seems crazy, but it's going to be a big number, and it will probably be the most watched regular season game in NFL history. And as our great researcher, Evan Kaplan pointed out, these two teams are in the same thing. If we look back to week 12, the Chiefs and the Cowboys, they both won in week 12. They both won by 3 points at home. They both kicked game-winning field goals as the final play of the game unfolded. They both trailed by double digits. They both had defenses that allowed 0 points in the fourth quarter and overtime. They both beat teams that were 8-2 entering the game. The Cowboys beating the Eagles, the Chiefs beating the Colts. Patrick Mahomes had 352 passing yards. Dak Prescott had 354 passing yards. So the Cowboys and Chiefs, it was mirror images of each other. And as I was saying on Get Up Monday morning, I almost could see the NFL script writers in May and June say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get both the Chiefs and the Cowboys to stage dramatic come-from-behind victories in Week 12 to set up the Thanksgiving Day game matchup so we have the highest-rated regular season game ever. I almost feels like this was rigged, fixed, like they couldn't have set this up better, like everybody was plotting this all along. And now we get this great matchup. By the way, the first course that day, your Packers and the Detroit Lions also is a great matchup. And then that leads into the main course of the Chiefs and Cowboys. And then for dessert, we get the Bengals and Ravens.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's no way this won't be the most watched, regular season game of all time. I think it would have been no matter what, even if both of these teams really would have been limping into this game, the numbers would have been massive given its time slot, Thanksgiving Day, all that kind of stuff. But now it's just kind of the cherry on top that both the Chiefs and the Cowboys, are little, I guess I don't know if you could argue that they're hot, but they're both in positions where they have to win. They feel like they can both make a run. And, the Chiefs coming off that massive win on Sunday. And then the Cowboys, man, I've been saying this for a few weeks now. I think they are just at face value one of the most fun teams to watch in the NFL. And now their defense is starting to come along too. So we'll see what happens there. I can't wait for that game. But you mentioned it, Shefty. Let's dive into those other two a little bit deeper in topic number 2. The rest of the Thanksgiving slate in the NFC North. This could be the type of game that decides who wins the division down the road. We don't know. And obviously Joe Burrow is coming back for the Bengals on Thursday night against the Ravens, who again, are kind of in a position to really grab the reins of the AFC North. What do you think about both of those games a little bit more?
Well, first of all, before I answer, I'm curious how you feel about the Packers on Thanksgiving Day. They going to pull it out or not?
So I was I think I take Sunday with a grain of salt because we know how bad J.J. McCarthy's been. And, if they would have lost that game limping in. But the Packers defense, I believe, keeps them in every game. I think it's why they're still a Super Bowl contender, because any given day, Micah Parsons can single-handedly take over a game. I know a lot of people were upset that the offense was very vanilla, but they didn't need to do anything special against the Vikings. It became very apparent early on there that there was a good chance 14 points was going to win that game. And, Jordan Love had that banged up left shoulder. He was handing the ball off with his off hand several times. A lot of people speculating that he might be hurt. So I feel very good about this Packers-Lions game. My question to you would be, is the health of the is Jaden Reed going to play? Is Josh Jacobs feeling better? I think if they have their full complement of offensive weapons back that they haven't had in a while, I feel very good about this, especially with the Lions team, who honestly is kind of limping into this week after, needing everything they could muster to get over the Giants. If they would have lost that Giants game, I would have felt a lot worse going into this one. But where we sit right now, I feel very good about the Packers on Thursday in Detroit.
You mentioned the Packers defense. And the one area where the Lions have seemed to be vulnerable lately is on the offensive line. So this would be the area where Green Bay would seem to have some sort of edge. And Green Bay's fared well in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day in recent years, right? Didn't they have the big win there a couple of years back?
Yeah, it's what spurred their, going 6-2 down the stretch and got them into the playoffs.
Right. So I could see that being the case again, where the defense makes the difference and it sets up well for Green Bay. Now, again, are they going to have Josh Jacobs back? And my guess would be yes, because I think he was close to playing on Sunday. I think they ultimately decided to hold him out, in part because they knew that it was a short turnaround to get ready for Thanksgiving Day and the Detroit Lions. And so my guess would be that Josh Jacobs is playing on Thanksgiving Day. Now, I also say, as somebody who rosters both Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, I wonder how that workload will be divvied up, because I do think Emmanuel Wilson has earned a little bit of work
Agree.
from Josh Jacobs. So I could see almost split carry, split work to try to help preserve Josh Jacobs, get the most out of him, and use the talents of Emmanuel Wilson. The Lions are coming off a big come-from-behind victory over the Giants. First game of the day. Did you notice they moved back the start time of Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
A
Yeah,
half hour.
it's usually 11 Central.
Right.
I was not happy about that.
They moved it back an hour. I don't have an official explanation as to why that happened, but I always thought it was like 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Either it was noon or it was I think it was 12:30 time, but it wasn't 1 or Eastern noon. Said that was not the start time in previous years.
No, and I don't know. Does it have anything to do with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? I guess I don't know what time that officially ends, and I don't know how much crossover there is there, but I just assumed it was, hey, let's move this back, and then there is no, that's what you're watching. There is no, oh, should we check in on this? Should we check in on this? But I don't know.
I actually would love to ask the NFL and get an answer. I don't have one now. I'd like to think that they're just giving everybody time to finish their turkey bowls and give everybody more time to get their Thanksgiving meals ready before we sit down for football at 1 o'clock and immerse ourselves in the couch and really give our attention to the NFL for the rest of the day. That's what I want to believe, but I don't think that's actually what is the real reason behind why they moved back the start time of the first game on Thanksgiving Day.
No, yeah, I would agree. So that one is, man, high stakes, big time, and so I'll be very interested to see, because up until earlier this year, the first week of the season, and outside of that Thanksgiving game a couple years ago, you could argue that Dan Campbell has had Matt LaFleur's number. I guess you can't argue it. It's, it just, the proof is in the pudding. So if the Packers can kind of, and who thought at this point in the season that the Packers and the Lions would both be looking up at the Bears? So I don't want to say this is a must-win game for either one of these teams, because it's not. But if you want to win the NFC North, this is not one that you can really afford to lose. And then, Shefty, you mentioned it, the dessert, if you will, the Thursday night game. Is that the main headline? Joe Burrow's back, even though, after losing on Sunday to the Patriots, it appears pretty apparent that the Bengals won't be making the playoffs, but a little more stake in that game. I guess it'll be infinitely more watchable now. I know that.
Well, let's say this. First of all, the Bengals say that they anticipate, that's Zach Taylor's word, anticipate Joe Burrow playing. I will say this. I just want to see that he is playing, because I still think there may be some conversations that occur this week before it's signed off on and made official. Again, I think he's going to play. Like them, I anticipate him playing. But I also thought Wednesday and Thursday, after he practiced in full and was pushing to play, I thought he played last week against New England. They held him out. They lost the game. I think they probably would have won the game with Joe Burrow. And if they win the game, now it really, Thursday night, takes on even more significance, but they didn't do that. So now you're 3-8. And it's like they're still alive mathematically, but they can't lose again. So I'm going to guess Burrow plays, but I would say that if they lose it all, like, I'm not having my franchise quarterback out there. I'm just not doing that. I'm not exposing him anymore to injury. That would be the storyline. Plus, obviously, this past week, the Steelers lost, the Ravens win. The Ravens are now in position to move ahead in that division if they could find a way to win here. So that obviously is a storyline as well. Baltimore's emergence from 1-5, back from the dead, rising up to challenge the Steelers for the AFC North title. But Joe Burrow will be the headline, with everybody anticipating, and I use that word anticipating, that he's going to play.
Yeah, and we talked about this, a little bit when you were on Pat's show. I want to say maybe it was last week. But listen, I understand he's a competitor. He wants to play, and that's a big part of it. But like you said, even if they do win out, I don't think 9-8 is going to win that division. Do you? I mean, barring something crazy that happens, I don't even think 9-8 would get the job done. Probably not, but not out of the question. Yeah, exactly. So I guess if that's what you're clinging to, then sure. And, I get it. There's fan service. You got to make sure that, people are still excited. And, we're getting to the point where it's, hey, we got to sell season tickets for next year and that kind of stuff. You want people to know that hey, Joe Burrow's okay. But it'd be one thing if they had a very stout offensive line and they were good there, but they're not, and that I think it's just one of those things that, hey, as a fan, I'm happy to watch him play on Thanksgiving, but boy, I just hope he can stay healthy.
One final note and credit to your boss and your friend
Yeah.
Pat. Roger Goodell told the Pat and McAfee show in April that they'd like to move the Thanksgiving start time from 12:30 to 1 Eastern to align with their traditional windows of 1/4/25 and 8/15. So were you off that day, Ty?
No, I do remember him saying
Okay.
that when we were at the draft in Green Bay, but I think I just ignored it completely because as a Packers fan and someone who was from the Midwest, I like that game being at 11 because guess what? I understand the traditional windows. Thanksgiving's not a traditional day. It's a special day.
Oh, I think it is. I think it is. I'm good. I'm good. I like the new window. Like, what I got to do? Get up Thursday morning in New York City. I got to get home. I want to hang out, relax, take it easy. Like, it just felt like football started a little earlier than normal, and it was out of the normal range of times that you get set. I'm good with the change. Thank you, NFL.
Okay. All right. Listen, I can't really bitch about it because ultimately I don't care. I would watch that game whenever it is. So they get it. But yeah, so the Thanksgiving slate this year, A-okay with me. I'm very excited for all three of those games. And like we said, all three have quite a bit of meaning moving forward. Let's move on to topic number 3 of this week's Six Pack, Shefty. A lot of people are going to say, why are you guys talking about the Browns? But it's crazy that the Browns are, they're kind of one of the hot things to talk about right now. Yesterday, you came on Pat's show, and at that point, Kevin Stefanski hadn't made a decision whether or not Shedeur would be the starter. He is going to start. And then on the other side of the ball, Myles Garrett is on pace to have 30 sacks this year and absolutely demolish the all-time sack record. What do you got on the Browns going into this Sunday?
First of all, Shedeur Sanders versus the 49ers. Love that. Like, just fantastic. And yeah, we there was no way that Kevin Stefanski couldn't start Shedeur Sanders on Sunday off a win. And I would say this, as long as Shedeur Sanders is winning and playing good football, they have to keep playing him. That's it. It's sort of like Jacoby Brissett in Arizona.
Yep.
Davis Mills in Houston. You picked the quarterback. Joe Flacco when he was in Cincinnati. If the backup quarterback who becomes the starting quarterback starts winning and producing and play, like, you're riding that guy. So Cleveland should be riding that guy. And Shedeur did what he had to do to win on Sunday. He played well, but Myles Garrett, holy cow. They had 10 sacks on Sunday. Now, it helps that Geno Smith holds on to the football a little longer than he should and that their offensive line is not great, but Myles Garrett needs 5 sacks in his last 6 games to break the NFL single-season record of 22.5 that is currently co-held by Michael Strahan and TJ Watt. He could get 5 sacks in one game, Ty. Like, would it surprise you if he set this in the next 2 weeks? Not at all, right?
No, and even if he doesn't, he has the Titans in a couple weeks. He has the Bengals again. We know how he plays, in division against the Steelers. The Bills just gave up 8 sacks to the Texans. He's got them on the schedule. At this point, I would be shocked if he doesn't end the season with 25-plus sacks.
Agree. He's going to walk away with the record. It doesn't matter that the league now plays 17 games. He might have it in I don't know what the most sacks in a 14-game season was before they switched to 16 and then 17, but he may have that record too. He is just tearing up and that's the strength of their team. But now you want to see how Myles Garrett fares Sunday against the 49ers. You want to see how Shedeur Sanders fares against the 49ers. And all of a sudden, the Browns, I'm not going to say must-see TV, but they are certainly interesting TV.
No, without a doubt. I mean, you go from being okay with seeing the highlights of the Browns game, and that's all it is Myles Garrett getting sacks, and then you look up and they're getting killed and they lose, and that's just how it is week in and week out. We mentioned it last week. I wonder what the numbers were on that Browns-Raiders game and what it would have been had Shedeur not started. Like him or, hate him, whatever. Everyone has an opinion about him, which is kind of what you want, especially if you're a team like the Browns and no one cares anyway. So, yeah, I mean, that game will be in quad boxes on Sunday, whereas otherwise, that's popping up on Red Zone, and you're thinking like, come on, what do we get to one of these games that matters? I don't care that the Browns are in the red zone. Well, now everyone does, and they want to see what's going to happen. So good for Shedeur, and he gets it. I mean, he's got a very small window of opportunity here. He knows he needs to seize that. And yeah, Myles Garrett, again, it's one of those things. I wish that guy could play meaningful football. I really do. You imagine him on some of these defenses going down the stretch and making a playoff run, but you're setting the NFL record for sacks and you're making $40+ million a year. That's not too bad either. So that'll be an interesting one on Sunday. I'm excited for that, especially after what we saw out of the 49ers last night.
That's the sneaky good matchup, the sneaky good game on Sunday that I'm going to be really kind of tuned into. Like, I wouldn't ordinarily think Browns 49ers is something that I want to watch. Plus, Kyle Shanahan was once the Browns offensive coordinator, goes back to his old stomping grounds, but I will be locked in on 49ers Browns on Sunday.
So will I. So, hey, if you're a Browns fan, hey, there's a little bit of hope now, I guess. Maybe not, but we'll see on Sunday. All right, Schefter, let's move on to topic number 4 of this week's Six Pack. After a tough loss in Kansas City on Sunday, the Colts fall to 8-3, and they have a bit of a murderer's row coming up with a lot of divisional games. Who teams in the AFC South now look like, wow, this could actually be a 3-horse race. Are you worried about the Colts?
Well, they have not performed as well on the road. Jonathan Taylor's numbers are down on the road. And I want you to take a look at this show. Now, they play the Texans on Sunday. Again, another sneaky great matchup. Yep. Texans coming on. Defense is playing at an all-world level. We talk about Myles Garrett being the best defensive player. But I got to tell you something. Will Anderson is not far off. Will Anderson on Houston is unbelievable. That defense in Houston is probably the best in the league. As good as Denver's is, as good as Cleveland's has been, Houston is the best defense in the league. It's been incredible to watch. The Colts' remaining schedule tie, okay? Houston at Jacksonville, where they have not fared well over the years. At Seattle, home for the 49ers, Jacksonville again, and at Houston. So there are 6 games left. I mean, look, it's a week-to-week league, but would you take 3-3 if you were a Colts fan right now with those 6 games?
Oh yeah, if you're a Colts fan, you would die for 3-3 over those next 6.
Okay, so where does 3-3 put them? What's their record right now?
They are 8-3.
So that would make them 11-6, and 11-6. That probably still wins the division, right? It probably still wins the division.
Let's see. So right now they're a game up on Jacksonville and 2 games up on Houston. So I guess that would be the big thing. It's like, hey, you better win all your divisional games and then hope that you can squeeze out a couple of those, games in Seattle or against the Niners.
Ooh.
By
the way, 3-3, yes. But what if they go 2-4?
I'd like to think that would still get them in, but that also, then it depends what Jacksonville and Houston does. And Houston's coming on right now.
Well, by the way, of these remaining 6, 4 of them against Houston and Jacksonville. So if they go 2-4, they're losing some games to those teams, you would think.
Yeah.
That's how the division's going to be decided in head-to-head matchups in the final weeks of the season. That's how it's going to go. I'm just saying, here's the bottom line. The Colts have had a great season. They're a playoff caliber team, but they don't seem as daunting today as they did a month ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's what's really tough for Colts fans is you go into the season with almost no expectations, almost thinking we'll finish above Tennessee, but this team was bad last year. Daniel Jones is going to be our quarterback. A lot of people didn't believe in him. And then you see what they do. They start 6-0 or 6-1 or whatever it was, and then everyone's starting to think, okay, this might be a Super Bowl team. So your expectations immediately go through the roof, and then you now it's reframing your mind to, hey, you know what? We're just happy with where we're at right now. We're going to be a playoff team. Hopefully we found our quarterback of the future. But you're right. It is a week to week league, but certainly I don't think we view the Colts the same way we did 3 weeks ago.
The luster is a little bit off. That's the point.
Right. And especially, I'm not going to say that it is, but Jonathan Taylor had been, if they had any type of lead in the fourth quarter, they just salted the game away with Jonathan Taylor. And it was kind of stress-free. Don't need to worry about it. This guy's going to break a big one, or he's just going to keep moving the sticks. The Chiefs did a pretty good job bottling him up, and Daniel Jones didn't play bad by any stretch of the imagination, but that is very clearly their formula for winning. They want to ride Jonathan Taylor. I don't think they want to get into a situation where Daniel Jones has to drop back and throw it 45 times and they have to protect and do all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. It could just be a minor hiccup, and I think a lot of people, too, like they played the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and I know the Chiefs' record isn't what it typically is, but like you said, there is certainly something to be said about they have looked much better at home. And are they going to have a home playoff game in the playoffs? Probably not. So that is something to keep an eye on. 3
home games left for India to take advantage of.
Yep, absolutely. And they need to take advantage of all 3 of those starting this Sunday against the Texans. All right, Schefter, let's move on to topic number 5 of this week's 6-pack. We had a couple of coaches get let go. I guess you could tell me, I don't know if this was surprising or not. The Giants fired defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, who, if I knew anything from Giants fans, they've been calling for that for weeks and weeks and weeks now. And then the Raiders fired Chip Kelly, 6 to 7 months after making him the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL. What are your thoughts on both of those firings?
Well, first of all, the Chip Kelly one comes down on Sunday night. And less than a year ago, the Raiders made Chip Kelly the highest paid offensive coordinator in the game. Now he's out, which, again, I think nobody's surprised that he's out, but I think it's surprising that going into week 13, you make the move. But the offense have been terrible. Shane Bowen, you mentioned, everybody was expecting that. So no surprise there. But here's the bigger point that I wanted to make about it. I've always felt like Thanksgiving is the official start of hunting season for coaches. Now, in the NFL, all of this stuff has been shifted around and fluid and moves around. We see trades now in January that are processed in March when the new league year begins, and we see trades that come down early in the season. We see head coaches fired in a month into the season sometimes, not as much this year, although Brian Callahan became the first and Brian Daboll the second. The blurring of the lines has really occurred. But in my old way of thinking, in the traditional way of thinking, I always felt like once we got to Thanksgiving, that's when we entered a time where you had to be tracking a coach on a Monday morning. When there's a bad loss on Sunday, like usually the first 12 weeks of the season, there's Sunday games, and my job is then to follow all the injuries and who's starting and who's being benched. And I think there's the added element once we get past Thanksgiving of injuries, who's starting, who's not, and is this coach safe? Yeah. Is this coach safe? And it started a week early because we saw 2 coordinators get fired within 12 hours of one another. Chip Kelly, Shane Bowen. So like everything else with this league, everything moves faster. Everything's been expedited. The lines are blurred. This always, to me, has been the start of hunting season, but hunting season got started a week early this year.
Yeah, definitely. It was last year, right, that Matt Eberflus got fired right after the Bears game
on Thanksgiving. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so happy Thanksgiving. We'll see. I don't know if I can only say what, we do Overreaction Monday, so I feel like I get the pulse of a lot of fan bases, albeit right after, either they're at the highest of highs or the lowest of lows. I see a lot of people talking about Zach Taylor and the Bengals I don't know if that would be a situation, if they have an absolute dud on Thursday night. But I did want to ask you, in situations like Mike McDaniel, where the ownership has already come out and said, hey, he's safe, he's going to be okay, we want him to, do you take any stock in that? Or is it the same thing where if they lose their next 4 games and on that 4th game they look absolutely terrible, is there a chance he gets gone? Or when an owner says he has our full vote of confidence, we're going to stick with him, do you generally think, okay, that guy's going to be safe then?
I happen to think with Mike McDaniel, he's going to be safe till at least the end of the season and very possibly into next year, because he is tied to Tua and they have to bring back Tua contractually. And so if Tua is back, then Mike McDaniel is back. It makes some sense, although we have to see how the season finishes. My larger, more conclusive answer is that I don't care what anybody says. If there are bad losses and there are embarrassing losses and incidents that happen, anybody is subject to be let go. Now, my own personal opinion is Mike McDaniel's safe until at least the end of the season. But if they lose this week 40-0 and there are bad circumstances and anything can happen.
Right.
Again, I don't know how many more we'll get. The league averages about 6.7 head coaching changes per year every year. We've already gotten 2. So the chances are we'll get 4 to 5 more. That's the chances, 4 to 5 more. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But you could start to go through your mind and find 4 to 5 guys, now that we've entered the hunting season, to figure out whether or not they're safe in their respective city.
And that's what's tough about this year is you go through and you look at who would potentially be a candidate to be, all the teams who have very poor records for the most part, like the Jets, we know that's not going to happen. The Titans obviously already did. Raiders, maybe Pete Carroll, we'll see. But it seems like this year it could be, I don't think it's going to happen. But again, there's the Mike Tomlin stuff every single year. If they don't make the playoffs, does something happen there?
Well, it's funny.
Name.
You bring up Mike Tomlin. I was on the phone with somebody last week. Mike Tomlin is a fixture in Pittsburgh. John Harbaugh is a fixture in Baltimore. Andy Reid is a fixture in Kansas City. There are certain fixtures in places that you would never think that anything would happen and that they will get to stay as long as they want. But as somebody said to me this week, they could see, and we don't know how, one of those three, all of a sudden, at the end of the year saying, enough. I've had enough. Time to move on. I'm not telling you it's going to happen. I'm just telling you what people are saying behind the scenes. It wouldn't shock you if one of those 3 happened, just because in this league, they've already been there so long and they've outlived any expectations or the average stay of a head coach. They're not going to be there forever. They're just not. So at some point, they're all going to move on. So could that be that this is one of those years that one of them, one of those legendary coaching figures, decides to move on? I'm not expecting it, but there are people who certainly are not ruling it out.
Sure. And again, I don't want to say I'm looking forward to it or I'm excited for it, because that's obviously the wrong connotation with guys getting fired. But I think we are, just by looking at the entire league right now. I think there will be at least 2 guys who get fired that will probably shock some people that thought, hey, I just assumed this guy would have a little bit longer of a leash. But ultimately, we'll see, because it does look like a lot of the teams who are not performing well are teams who we kind of knew weren't going to perform well going into the year, and who have young head coaches who, are going to be able to kind of see their franchises get built in their vision. So we'll see, though. Like you said, Thanksgiving is kind of the time when that time clock starts to tick. All right, Shefty, let's move on to the 6th and final topic of this week's 6-pack. Let's do our power rankings. Who do you got?
All right. Power rankings, Ty. I mean, to me, this is simple. The number 1 slot goes to the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know how you make an argument for anybody otherwise. They look like the most balanced team, the most impressive team. I'll say this. When I was there this summer with Oz the Mentalist for a full day, the vibe I got there was high. The people around there are great. Everybody gets along, quality individuals. Just leaving that team, I'm like, this is a great organization. This is a great group of individuals. This is a group that may have great things in front of them. Matthew Stafford could win MVP. Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, incredible. The defense is so good. And Chris Shula is going to be a head coaching candidate this year, their defensive coordinator. So they got so much going on. I think the Rams are really, really good. At number 2, we're going to go with the Denver Broncos for right now. Right now, Denver Broncos. I'm moving up to number 2. They're coming off the bye. They haven't played their best football, but again, great defense. Great defense travels. Number 3, we're going to go New England. New England's on Monday Night Football against the New York Giants. We'll see how that works out. At number 4, we're going to go with the Seattle Seahawks, coming off the big one in Tennessee. 5, Chicago Bears. And 6, Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I'm missing the Kansas City Chiefs, and I want to put the Chiefs on the list. I'm missing the Colts. There's some teams I'm missing. If the Chiefs win on Thanksgiving Day in Dallas, they will move up into the top 6. But right now, we're going to go Rams, Broncos, Patriots, Seahawks, Bears, who have been playing great football, and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, our first 4 are almost identical. I also have the Rams. Like you said, I don't think you can make an argument that they're not the best team in the NFL. You just watch those games, and they are just so dominant. Their offense, they can score however they want, and it just looks effortless. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then I feel like people are starting to talk about their defense, but their offense is kind of, dominated the headlines. Their defense is unbelievable and so young. I had the Patriots at number 2. I think it just, at a certain point, a team's 10-2. It might not look great every single week, but you can't argue with a team that just wins. And Mike Vrabel and Drake May and the entire crew over there. Now, we'll see what happens because, they're a little banged up on the offensive line now. We'll see if they can weather that storm. But it is just remarkable what they've been able to do thus far. I had the Broncos at 3. Again, I agree, but with that defense, they're And I do feel like Bo Nix is kind of starting to take that leap. When it matters in crunch time, he showed us a couple times this year that he's got what it takes and he can lead them to wins. I also had the Seahawks at 4. I feel like this is all we're kind of just waiting. We're just waiting until the Seahawks and the Rams play each other again. That's kind of what it's ultimately going to come down to. Because boy, I'll tell you what, that game ended up being, I think, a little bit closer than it probably should have been. But the Seahawks, when they want to put it on people, they can. Jackson Smith and Jigba is unbelievable. Yeah. He's so fun to watch. At number 5, I had the Colts. I still believe in them. But again, we'll see. We talked about their stretch, so they get to go prove it here. And then at 6, I had the Packers. So I just, I think their defense, Micah Parsons, if they can get healthy here on offense, and again, Thursday will say a lot about that team, but, for a team that's fairly inconsistent, at the very least, their defense is going to keep them in almost every game. And yeah, teams like the Bears and the Chiefs are right on the precipice of being in the top 6.
There's a lot of teams right there at the bottom, right? Chiefs, Packers, Lions, Bears, a lot of Colts, like a lot of teams we could point to that are worthy of one of the top spots. But the bottom line is it'll be decided here in the final weeks of the season. We've entered into Thanksgiving week. We've entered into the stretch run of the NFL. We've entered into the holiday season. We've entered into the best time of the year, and want to wish you and your family, the family of Dan Stanzik, the family of Ben Schmit, the family of all the people listening today, a very happy Thanksgiving and holiday season. We'll be back in this spot next week after this week's games to look back at week 13, look ahead to week 14, and watch how quickly this whole thing moves, Ty. Until then, have a great weekend.